Okay, so it's a pleasure to be joined by a good friend of mine, Jerry Beach. And Jerry and I met when,
Matt.
met. We were just joking a little bit ago that we may never be in the same room together until, what's your guess when there's a vaccine? 2040?
Kids are all in college at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
Or out.
Yeah, out of college at the rate things are going. But one of the things that I wanted to, when Jerry and I met, it was after I did, how's this for a memory for you? After I did a tweet storm about my days as the sports information director at Chicago State University, and a mutual follow then said, "Oh, you should check this out." And OMG, the reality was that as crazy as it sounds, Chicago State University, where I was sports information director, and Hofstra University, where Jerry was in school at the time, were for one brief season, one shining moment, if you will, they were members of the same athletic conference, the East Coast Conference.
Right. Despite the fact Chicago is not, as far as we know, on the East Coast.
Right. And there was some real interesting geographic craziness going on with that conference. So why don't we start there? Because I wanted to, so Jerry Beach does a few things in the sports related universe. He's been covering the Mets since
late 90s, 97 or so.
I was going to say since the Nixon administration or so, it seems. And covers
Tricky Dick enjoyed Met games. He often at Shea back.
That's right. And he lived at what, Cherry Hill, New Jersey? Is that where he was? And
I know he died in Jersey, and he's buried. I think he's buried there with his wife. But yeah, he after everything, he stayed in the area and was quite the Met fan. Not sure if he sent them plays like he sent the was it the Dolphins or Redskins. Super 7, he sent one of them a play, right? It had to be the Redskins. It was Washington D.C.
Yeah,
run this play. They lost like 9 yards.
They actually ran
the politics, Rich.
They actually ran the play.
I think so.
That's
bizarre.
I
have to Google that later, but I know they ran the play at some point. I don't know if it was a Super Bowl, but I'm almost sure they ran a play that President Nixon suggested.
Didn't Reagan design some plays though for like a East-West Shrine Bowl or one of those sorts of games?
That would make some sense. That sounds obviously Reagan was a huge sports guy.
Yeah.
Remember when Reagan did the second and third inning in the '89 All-Star game after he was out of office?
I do.
And I think he broadcast Bo Jackson going yard.
Yeah, but Bo Jackson, which I still remember on. I still remember Jerome Jaranovich from CNN Headline News telling us that Bo Jackson hit a 486-yard home run. And I thought, that is quite the home run. But
he might have too.
Yeah, it's very well. So we're going to go all over the map here, but Bo Jackson has to be up there on the list of best athletes you've seen perform in person.
I wish I was a little bit older so I could appreciate it more. Because Bo, I was born in 73, so Bo was what? So I was like 13 when he 12 when he won the Heisman. And then, the teen years when he, plays both sports and in college when he played his last year with. Do you remember who he played his last year with?
So I know I know he was with the White Sox.
But the team after that. In the strike year.
I don't remember.
California Angels.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's and that's
when you're young, you think, oh, okay, Bo Jackson's awesome.
Right.
25 years later, like that dude was unbelievable, and kind of wished you'd understood enough back then and known enough to appreciate what was ending when he took that bad step for the Raiders and the hip jarred, and that was the end of that.
Right.
He was awesome.
The ability that he had, though, to still have a baseball career that lasted another 6-7 years.
Not that long. I'm looking up right now. He got hurt in, I think, January '91. So it would have been 1990 season.
Right.
I think he played the next 1, 2, 3. I think the next 4 years. I'll tell you in a minute. But the fact that he didn't do either sport full time and had the career that he did, it's remarkable.
Right. And he also is just an interesting guy in general. I think he still lives and works in the south side of Chicago. I know he had a stuttering problem.
Yes, I remember reading that.
And one of the ways that he overcame the stuttering problem was getting into acting.
Yep.
And then he started doing like episodes of Law and Order and those sorts of things.
Fascinating dude. Yeah, he missed the 92 season.
Okay.
So I'll tell you in a second when he played football. I thought he played football less than 90, but I could be wrong.
I think my Bengals ended his
1990 was your Bengals. Yeah, he got hurt against the Bengals.
Ended his
last
career.
Season.
Yeah.
1989. 950 yards rushing, 5.5 average. Jeez.
How many games?
89, 11 games. 11 games. Jeez, almighty. 86.4 yards per game. So you throw him over a 16-game season. It's a 1,500-yard season.
Right.
His long runs each of his 4 years, 87, 91 yards, 88, 25 yards, 89, 92 yards, 90, 88 yards. Jeez.
One of those was on a Monday night, right?
Yes. Truck Brian Bosworth. The Boz. Speaking of actors.
Yeah. So one of the reasons I wanted to catch up with you, though, is we're recording this on June 19th, and baseball's touch and go. Are we or aren't we going to have a season? So that's the question I'd give to you, and you're closer to the thick of things, having covered the Mets for so long. What's your gut tell you?
I felt a lot better until about 2 hours ago when the Phillies announced that they had a bunch of positive tests at Clearwater in Florida where they practice. I don't know. If this was a more of a, if it had rolled across the country, in March, I'm out east, we got hammered.
Mm-hmm.
If it had it rolled like that, like a wave or something, but it just seems to be coming, hot spots here and there. New York's okay at the moment, but how do we know how it'll be in 2 weeks? We opened up last week. What are we going to see in terms of new infections in 2-3 weeks? What are we going to see? What if the protests were super spreader events? We don't know.
Right.
So right now, Northeast looks good, and Texas, Georgia, Florida, Alabama. Not Alabama, and California look bad. Mm-hmm. But what if they're getting the brunt of theirs now, and we get an uptick? So, I don't know. And especially, I know I'd read that a lot of the baseball teams are being encouraged to hold spring training part 2 at their home stadiums. So Citi Field, Yankee Stadium, Citizens Bank Park for the Phillies.
Right.
But what do you do if you've had a lot of guys working out like the Phillies apparently did, and I'm sure other teams have too, and two of the biggest states getting hit right now are Arizona and Florida? What do you do? Do you have to quarantine players who travel from there? Do you have to quarantine players who travel from anywhere else? Do you have to wait 2 weeks and then start spring training? I don't know. It's I felt pretty good most of the week. I never felt bad about the, Manfred said I don't know if I'll have a season. I just thought that was, posturing and negotiating, and I'd rather not have a 50-game season. That's a joke, but I thought even then that there'd be a season. Felt really good on Wednesday when everyone seemed to be getting along well. That lasted about 24 hours. And now I don't know. Like, what do you do if there's spikes in these spring training markets? 8 players. I think it's 5 players and 3 coaches, or vice versa, 3 staff members. That's a lot of people.
We
don't know who else got impacted. And then we just before we logged on, I saw that the Tampa Bay Lightning had a bunch of positives. So, are we get sports in any way, shape, or form this summer? I don't know.
Well, and
I felt pretty good until an hour ago.
Well, you touched on something interesting because Florida, there are a couple issues. So first of all, the Clearwater Phillies thing.
Yep.
which creates a whole other question about, do you call it contact tracing? So if you've got 5 players and 3 coaches, where have they been? Who have they? Do they have to be quarantined? Do they have to be quarantined with their family? Have their families been down there? All of those sorts of questions. So, and then if you remove that for a second, you've got to ask yourself about the possibility, and I don't know, the best commissioner in sports is Gary Bettman, but I don't know if he has decided yet where everybody's supposed to be playing.
They haven't. There's hub cities, both conferences.
Yeah, so they're going to have an epicenter and all that. Right. But Florida was on the list of possibilities, correct?
Sure was. And it's obviously it's where the NBA is supposed to play.
That's another thing that is, right? I think you've got a number of questions swirling about that NBA thing and how they handle the quarantine during the season and how long the season is supposed to go. It's another 50 some odd days.
Yep. And
then half of the teams would be gone or something like that.
Yep.
And then the logistics of who accompanies the team, how many personnel are there, all of that. It has the potential to be a mess. And I wonder, maybe baseball, maybe basketball would be 2 examples where players might say there is much more at stake for me to play than there is for me to sit it out.
Yep. We've already heard about that, in baseball, Mike Trout and Clayton Kershaw, 2, Hall of Fame bound guys, said way back when they're talking about bubbles in Arizona, I don't know if that's a good idea. And Zach Wheeler, pitcher for the Phillies now, was a Met before that, said my first child is being born this summer. I'm not going to a bubble and missing that.
Right.
And there's a whole there's a handful of ball players who have fought cancer. Anthony Rizzo, Carlos Carrasco, Chad Bettis from the Rockies.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't make sense for them to sit out the year. Guy, and then it just if they have a spring training, it's gonna be a shortened spring training. Obviously, it's not gonna be 6 weeks, probably 3 weeks.
Right.
Go right into the season. So what's to say that player X, superstar player X, says, no, not worth it. Not worth it. I'll bang the season. I'm on a Hall of Fame track. I don't need to, especially pitchers. I don't need to run the risk of hurting myself over a ramp up spring training for a 50 to 60 game season, or 50 to 70 game season, and then to hurt myself and then miss all of 2021 as well.
Right.
It's good. It's going to be fascinating.
Blake Snell, I think, is the biggest example of somebody saying, this whole thing ain't worth it.
Yep. And he's not wrong.
It's interesting that he caught some flack for that in the moment,
mm-hmm.
but I think now in the sober light of day, it doesn't seem like it was that crazy later for him to say.
Yep.
So
I agree. I mean, it's up to each guy. I mean, it's probably, Joe Blow, the 26th guys on the team now. They're going to be on that. So the 28th, 29th guy on the roster in July or August, big league paycheck for a few weeks. Right. Yeah. Worth it.
Yeah.
Superstar A, maybe not.
And if you've got the other thing that's at work here, though, is I did read a stat. And again, all of these stats, I think, are subject to large asterisks because of what lies, damn lies, and statistics.
Right.
But I did read a stat that in the 15 to 24 cohort, that COVID-19 is fatal in 0.12 cases out of every 100,000.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the flip side to the equation is how many of these, you've got your Zach Wheeler example where he says, having a kid and I'm not going into a bubble, I'm not going to miss this. But then how many of the other ones are thinking, I'm young, I'm healthy, the stats are on my side, and maybe not for the Mike Trouts who have the endorsement deals plus the $30 million plus contract. But for the mid-tier guys who have to figure out, maybe I'm just going to make a couple million a year. I'm not going to make as much, but this is a chance for me to prove myself. Perhaps it's a contract year. I'm going to be a free agent or something like that. They may say to themselves, I got a chance of beating this if I get it. It could be no worse than the common cold. We don't know.
Yep. Yeah. And so you said about free agents, that's what I thought. There's guys who are in the walk years now.
Yeah.
And if you have a good half year, and the market's going to stink after this year no matter what, a good half year gives you a shot at, getting a decent long-term deal next year, this winter, or a decent one-year deal, and hopefully build off that, and maybe things are a little less chaotic by 2022. When, of course, there may not be baseball because they may be on a strike or a lockout. So that's another topic. But, it's to me, the most concerning thing about sports coming back is not just, what if the athletes get it? It's what if the coaches get it? The managers get it?
Right.
They're all much older. Dusty Baker's 71. He's no longer the manager, but the Mets, Terry Collins was, I think, the oldest manager when he was there. If not, he just turned 71. Okay. He's not there anymore. I'm just saying, he was an example.
Right. Joe Madden's in his late 60s.
Who is?
Joe Madden is in his late 60s.
Last year, the Mets pitching coach was in his 80s. Phil Wigan.
Nice.
I mean, he's not there anymore, but so I read a stat. I think it was in The Athletic. I think Jason Stark had it about the percentage of coaches who are in their 50s and beyond. And it's a lot. Hockey. You had a small bench,
right?
And like it's coming on and off. And there was some talk about putting the coaches a level up. Coaches here and players here, so that there's less interaction. The coaches, are older in that league, obviously, as well. So, the problem is the first thought probably is, how do you protect the players, but how do you protect everybody else who's older and presumably more vulnerable to the ailment?
Right. So I want to ask you about long-term brand damage potential specifically for baseball, because I'm biased as a Cubs fan. 2016 was probably the height of baseball's wow, this is really cool factor, at least in my book. After that, 2017, decent World Series, but then we found out later, boy, was that
real good World Series.
Yeah, rather tainted by the stain of sign stealing.
Yep.
And now we know that the sign stealing was probably a little more prevalent. So now you get this, I hate to use the term perfect storm, but it's sort of a perfect storm scenario of bad stuff for the league, in that you had some really bad cheating going on. Manfred is not positioning himself as being the greatest guy on the planet.
No.
And of course, he's hired by and would be fired by the owners. So he has to protect their interests, and the owners are looking a little on the greedy side, but then again, so are the players. And you've got this 2021, 2022 stuff happening. I'm not very optimistic that the long-term brand damage isn't really, really bad for the game. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I wrote something last week about, after the 94 strike, 94-95 strike, there was obviously fans were furious and ticked off and said they'd never go back. And I'm sure some didn't. Baseball back then had an infrastructure that could kind of lure people back. I went to college out here on Long Island, and the Yankees offered dollar bleacher tickets. So we'd go on a Friday afternoon, brave traffic, and go in, and we'd all stand in line in the Bronx to wait to get into $1 seats. Like Marge Simpson said when asked if Bart's rental card would smash in Knoxville. I don't even know. Can we do that this year? I don't even know where to begin to tell you what's wrong with that idea. Standing in line, $1 tickets, going to baseball games. It's not going to happen this year.
Right.
So 2020 is out in terms of just trying to win fans back Because we can watch baseball games at home, and that's if there's a season, that's why there will be a season, because the TV deals are lucrative enough to make it work. Where you just watch, it's like the Truman Show. You just watch some people,
Right.
You don't have to be in person to watch it. But I think, and I could be wrong, I think, if you want to get people who are mad at the game or have fallen out of love with the game to fall back in love with the game and or forgive it for doing what's done, you need to go to a ballpark.
Right.
You need to eat a hot dog. You need to smell the green grass. You need to feel the swell of a crowd when you watch a triple. This guy hits for second, third, hit a triple.
Right.
Or just a cool ballpark environment. I was fortunate to see 2 no-hitters, and it's like, you could feel it build each inning. Like, holy moly, this guy's got a shot. So to me, that's the best way for the game to get people back, is by actually bringing them to the game, not just, okay, you're sitting home watching the game while cooking dinner, helping your kid with his or her homework, et cetera, et cetera. So 2020 is up for that. 2021 doesn't look so hot. Are we going to feel comfortable being in crowds with 20,000 of our closest friends, or 40,000? 2022 is the first season following the expiration of the current CBA. Do we think that these guys are going to come to an agreement without a work stoppage? So you look at 2023 possibly as the next time you can bring fans into a ballpark where there is A, baseball being played, and B, you feel safe and secure and healthy doing it. 2023 is a long time away.
It is.
It's been 3.5 months. Well, I'd say 3 months since everything was shut down, and we understood why it was shut down. Nobody's leaving baseball because they shut down because of a global pandemic that none of us our age have ever seen.
Right.
It's unprecedented, but for us it is. But in those 3 months, a lot has happened. None of it good. But we've all found different ways to buy the free time we do have and to distract ourselves. So, again, it's understandable, but it's not baseball's fault that all this has happened. But 3 months have gone on, and people have found other ways to divert themselves, other diversions. What happens now if that 3 months becomes 6 months? 6 months becomes a year. And especially if even if now, God forbid, if there's no baseball in 2020 because of the virus, people are still going to remember that they dickered about how to play baseball for a month, for 6 weeks. So people would have been more forgiving if they started up and had to scrap it again because this didn't go away. But even if it's scrapped now because this won't go away, we're still going to remember that they never got to the starting line.
That's a good point, because
of this stuff.
If there's another wave in Florida and Adam Silver talks to the players and they're like, you know what, this is too much of a risk, and they end up canceling the remainder of the season, you're going to have some unhappy NBA fans, but in the end, they will forgive them. They will forgive the players and be like, you know what, it just wasn't going to happen.
Wasn't meant to be.
Wasn't meant to be. Exactly. And I think the NHL would probably have the same sort of thing. And the NHL was the first to say we're back and here's a date, and kind of drill a line in
tells you how precarious it really is.
Right.
Yeah.
Major League Soccer, I think, has a plan to come back with a 50 game tournament or something.
Though, right?
Yeah, and that's. I mean, I think that's very noble of them to. It's an opportunity, certainly, because you have a lot of people who are going to be unhappy baseball fans, and your only live sports during the past couple of months have been soccer
and cornhole. Don't forget cornhole.
Yeah, well, don't forget cornhole. Well, I mean, you've had the Bundesliga, and then those would be the live team sports, and then the Premier League back online. So you mentioned something interesting, though, and I wanted to ask you about this because you've been covering sports for your professional career. how do you occupy your free time now that there's other than the waxing poetic about what has happened and what might happen?
Mm-hmm.
How do you keep busy and keep yourself from going crazy? Yeah.
Well, I've got a kid, so that helps pass the time.
Right.
But like just for like diversion, it's like, the first couple of weeks, it's fun to watch old games and kind of write about them a little bit and talk about them and watch old this week in baseballs. But it's kind of it's just like at some point like, oh man, I know how this game ends. I saw it, and like I ended up watching the last two games of the Mets Giants NL Division Series in 2000, which I hadn't seen since it happened. So that was cool. That was just this week, Wednesday, Thursday night.
Okay.
But like I'm just watching, a lot of sitcoms.
Yeah.
Watching Simpsons again and again and again. I'm watching It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and just kind of just channel surfing at night. It's not baseball, it's not basketball, it's not hockey, but if I sit here waiting for sports to start, stare at my TV, I'll go a little crazy. So I'm not a soccer guy. Maybe I will become a soccer guy. I'm not a NASCAR guy. Maybe I will become a NASCAR guy. It's just like the sports that have come back aren't my thing.
Golf?
For people who are, it's great. I'm glad for them. But
have you watched any golf?
I have not. But they came back, I know, with no fans in Dallas, right?
Yeah, no fans in Dallas, and then this week they're in Hilton Head.
Yep.
And so far, and one of the advantages is golf is probably the sport that I follow the closest behind baseball, college basketball, and so it's been a blessing for me to watch and follow golf. I think one of the things that is helpful to golf is logistically it's all spread out, and even though they had a lot of people that were, I think they said about 400 people per tournament were going to be in the quote unquote bubble. It's a few days in a town and then you're on to the next thing. Yep. I think golf has a couple of advantages that they've got. They picked the two tournaments that they could get right on CBS. They're part of the CBS Rota. So you've got these familiar people. And even if you're not as familiar with the golfers themselves, some of the bigger names are there and performing okay in the first two tournaments. They're on CBS, and you've got Jim Nantz. So there's an immediate familiarity with,
recognizable voice.
Right. And CBS, I think, did a good job during the slowdown of showing old events. So you have this, wait a minute, tremendous. Jim Nantz was on the calls of every NCAA final since 91.
Right. Duke, Kentucky, 92, yeah.
Yeah. So they can show all of those things, and you've got the familiarity deal. They also had they picked two events that the casual to more than casual golf fan is kind of familiar with. So it's like the Colonial. It's got a different name, but it's still the Colonial. Yep. And then Hilton Head, which is always the stop the week after the Masters. Well, that's not the case this year, but it's a familiar with the lighthouse and all of that.
A little bit of brand, yeah.
Yeah. So, but one of the things you did before the quarantine to keep yourself busy, and I think has probably kept you busy during, is this.
Yes. How can I forget that? Yes, I tweet about that every night. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. So
when current events allow, I tweet about it. There's a handful of nights in early this month where I didn't. But,
So, talk to me about the book writing process, and I guess how it might have been a little different or a lot different from your day-to-day journalism work.
Mm-hmm. It's funny we're talking about this week because it was a year ago this week that I got this assignment. It's funny. Books should typically take a couple years to write. You get a year to write, a year to research, and then a year to write. And as an author, you propose a book and you send in the proposal, and the house discusses it, ponders it, says what to do, what not to do. This one, a friend of mine wrote me and said there's an opening in this editorial calendar. Excuse me, at Sports Publishing Inc. They had a book, Subway Series book, ready to go, but the writer couldn't finish it. They need someone who can write it and meet the deadline by mid-November. Actually, at that point it's October 31st, Halloween. I said, well, there's about 3 things I can write a book about in 4 months: Hofstra basketball, The Simpsons, and the 2000 baseball season in New York. Because back then I was covering Mets for Mets.com. That was the last year before MLB.com became the umbrella site. All the team sites had. Back then there was Major League Baseball.com, and each team independently produced its own site. And I worked for a company that operated the sites for the Mets, Yankees, Brewers, I think the Devil Rays, handful of teams. So that was a pretty great summer. So I said, I covered the Mets most of that summer. I said, well, I can write a book about that in 4 months. And it wasn't the Power Broker. They're just looking for 60,000 to 70,000 words. So I can do that. So I had a bunch of it worked out really well because I knew I did most of the Mets that summer, and they were the team that lost the World Series. So they did, they certain familiarity there. They recognized me, and then the Yankees, who didn't know me, well, they won the World Series. They'll talk about it with a complete stranger. So, again, I was really fortunate where I am. I'm in the Baseball Writers Association of America, so that means I can go to, back when there were baseball games we played, I go at any park in the country with my badge, my credential, and get in. So I was mostly doing Mets work, but things worked out really well last summer. They started an alumni group, and so every weekend, then they were home, they'd have an alum, and usually it was a 2000 guy. It was just really worked out well. Todd Pratt, Lenny Harris, Benny Agbayani, a couple others. But plus, the Subway Series didn't just start obviously with 2000. That was the big one. Mm-hmm. But back in the 70s, the Yankees and Mets shared Shea Stadium. One second. There you go. Sure. There you go. Shared Shea Stadium for a couple seasons while the Yankees being renovated. So a reliever named Skip Lockwood visited Citi Field last year, and he talked about what it was like to play in the same park as the Yankees all year. The Mets' first All-Star, I believe, was Ron Hunt, and he was a guy who's picked up from he wasn't their first All-Star. He was their first, I think, homegrown All-Star. But he picked up, I think, from the Giants picked up in the minor league draft in '62, and he says, he was there with Skip Lockwood, and he said he had a story of playing at the Polo Grounds with Mets originally played, and some fan says to him, "Hey, number 12, whatever his number was, come over here." And he walks over there. Kid says, "Whose reject were you?" Because the Mets were drafted. The Mets were built in an expansion draft, and they were built. All expansion drafts aren't very good. This one was the worst because, as you know, they lost 120 games that first year, and were 1,000 or something games under 500 the first 9 years before they won the World Series. So it was cool. So there are a lot of 2000 guys I got to talk to there, but there are also guys. Todd Hundley, whose dad Randy was a Cub.
Right.
And Todd was a Cub too.
Yep.
He had the first stolen base in Subway Series history on the back end of a double steal. He stole home, and Petrusky stole second. So he asked about that. Petrusky was there. He asked about that. Jay Payton, 2000 Met. So there's a lot of guys who showed up during the season. Just real easy to ask them questions, ask them about the season, and then I'm in Long Island, so I just take a couple of bridges, get to the Yankee Stadium, and the Yankees broadcasters are David Cohn and Paul O'Neill.
There you
They're
go.
phenomenal. Joe Torre is still connected with the game as the with Major League Baseball. I saw him at a Met game, so I got to talk to him. The only trip I made was to Philadelphia to talk to Joe McEwing, who's a White Sox coach. Joe, Super Joe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to get a roundabout way to answer your question was, that there was a lot of, I'm at the ballpark to do this day's game, but also talk to this player or these players and transcribe these quotes and put them to the side and work on that later.
Right.
So long before I'd made this trip to long before I made got the book, we'd made plans to go to Disney World in August. Don't go to Disney World in August; it's very hot. But back when we could go to Disney World, but we'd made plans to go to Disney World with our daughter. So I had to be the only person at Disney carrying Roger Clemens biographies with me on the shuttles to the parks, reading Jeff Pearlman's book and Rocket's quickie autobiography after the '86 season. And this is the life. This is the glamours, right?
Yeah.
So it's just a lot of it was a short time frame, but you do the games and you do them, and then you just find time at night to do the transcriptions and the writing. And what I did, this is my third book, and what I kind of figured was try not to do a lot of writing until you get a lot of interviews done, because otherwise you're going to waste a lot of perfectly fine words. You write about something, and then you talk to 3 more players, and those guys end up having the most pertinent experiences and quotes and recollections. So I actually started writing on Labor Day, and I finished, like I said, I talked like November 10th or 12th or so. So what I try to do is I try to do 1,000 words a day. That never happened. It's like 3,000 words one day, woo, and then crash at the wall, and then kind of like stumble around for a couple of days, and then 3,000 words another day. So but yes, so I didn't really. I tried to make sure I had all my research. Like I said, I had a bunch of stuff from way back in the day, clips, interviews. I still had floppy disks. Remember those?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
I had floppy disks that my wife got me a floppy disk player, and most of them transcribed. There's a lot of gibberish and a lot of characters and stuff, but I was able to kind of figure out, clean up a lot of it. And so all the quotes I have about Game 4 of the World Series, the in the moment quotes, were from my 2000 notes.
Wow.
Yeah. So and I've access. Now it's much easier. I can research my local newspaper, Newsday, online without having to go to the library. So that's saving me a ton of time too. Because as you know, if you get into microfilm, you just start looking at stuff. Oh yeah. Oh, what came out that summer of 2000? Oh, Arlington Road. Oh, that was a great movie. Oh, that was actually 99. Oh yeah, I'm gonna read about the reviews there. You just end up blowing a day, doing nothing.
It's like going to Twitter.
Yeah. Twitter before Twitter was microfilm. So, except microfilm doesn't argue back. So
that's also true. Yeah.
Microfilm is nice and static.
Yeah.
So, So, I tried to do all my writing, my research all my research and interviewing before I did the writing. And it didn't work out that way because, nothing's perfect. I got Joe Torre mid-September. I got Scott Brocious late September. But, by that point, the frame of the book had taken place, and I knew what I was doing. So within a span of, like I said, just under 5 months, the book went from never heard of it to done. And it's not usually the way it's going to go. Like I said, it's usually closer to a 2-year process. But I knew the subject matter. I was very confident with it, and I knew I could do a pretty good job with it. So it was fun to jump into it and do it.
And I'm imagining that part of the plan before Corona was you're going to take this book and you're going to go everywhere with it. And you're going to, if there's a shopping mall that says, let's sign the book at a Barnes and Noble, or if there's a player appearance at one of the Mets or whatever, that can also be there. I'm imagining that. Yeah. So how are you promoting the book without being able to be physically anywhere promoting the book?
We've got a really good local bookstore here called Book Review, REVUE, one of the most famous independent bookstores in the country. They've had presidents. I know President Clinton was here. I'm not sure I don't know if we had George Bush here, but we've had the store's had high-powered people of both sides of the aisle there. And I did a book signing there for a book I wrote about the Red Sox and the media called Fighting Words back in 2009. And it's like the bookstore. So like I had people there, who never, weren't into the Red Sox or baseball, but they go to book signings at the Book Review. And that was really cool to talk to people and actually, talk to someone with no with a barren landscape
Right.
canvas.
Yeah.
They had no interest in the book, but like, oh, cool. No interest in the topics, but like, it sounds interesting to go to a book talk.
Mhm.
And that was really cool. And I sold a few books that way, and that's really, really cool. It would have been fun to do it this way, but maybe next year, maybe 2022. I mean, if they don't, if they don't play this year, it really stink. But like, if they don't play in the World Series, it's still very, the last chapter of the book is everything since 2000. And it's funny, right in that chapter, I thought I'd just write about kind of a quick, where are they now? But the first season after 2000 is, of course, 2001, and 9/11 ends up being a really, focal point because the Mets were really hot at that point and almost made the playoffs with a run around there. The Yankees, of course, we all thought we're going to win the World Series that year with the great comebacks they had in games 4 and 5 at home. Mm-hmm. And then I just kind of went, it's been 20 years, 19 years at that point. There's a lot of, tapestry and narrative to be built between the two teams now, and it's the rivalry is 23 years old. That's a long time. So it was fun to kind of write about how it's evolved, even though they haven't played each other in the World Series since then.
It's an interesting point, and I saw this in one of your tweets, and I wanted to get some clarification and make sure my head is not crazy, because the interleague play started for real in 98, correct? 97. Okay. All right. So that's where I've had it wrong in my 16th. Head. Okay. All right. Because I remember the Cubs playing the White Sox, of course, and they were wearing like the 1920s uniforms.
Right.
And I used to know, I guess I had the wrong year, but do you know the two teams that played in the first ever interleague game and who threw the first pitch?
I think interleague happened all on the same day, in June 16th of 2019. I'm going to look it up right now. Do you know the answer?
I do know the answer. The first pitch was thrown by Darren Oliver, and the two teams that played, it was the night before, or it was like the first.
Texas versus
San Francisco. It was a
preview.
Yeah.
So it's been June 15th.
I believe so. It was a preview of the 2012 World Series.
Oh, yeah. San Francisco, Texas, yeah.
2010 World Series.
12
was 2010, because 12 was the Tigers. 2011 was the whole Cardinals, 11 and 11.
Right.
BS.
2011, Darren Oliver was on the mound for the Rangers with a chance to close it out.
I do remember that.
Yep. Yeah. He'd never been a closer, but it was extra innings, and they used Feliz, and he was like an out away, I think, 2 outs away from winning the World Series. But I forgot. I apologize. You are correct. I forgot there was a Monday night game. I remember that because now I remember it. I didn't remember it before. I remember because I was at a newspaper in my hometown of Connecticut, and I remember picking off the pictures on the wire. And now I do know this. Do you know who the first American League pitcher was to homer in an interleague game? You're on the right team. I'll give you that.
I don't know.
Bobby Witt.
Bobby Witt.
The Rangers.
B. Period Witt.
It had to be that week.
I
remember that now. Because you'd sit there in Oliver, I remembered pulling off pictures of Bobby Witt homering because he was on my fantasy team. I'm like, this should count for me. I got a home run for my pitcher.
It's funny you mention fantasy leagues, because every time I see Bobby Witt's name, I'm reminded of one of the few seasons that I did fantasy baseball. It was freshman year of Syracuse. And this is pre anything. I mean, there was the internet wasn't even conceived at this point.
You had to use USA Today, right, for your stats?
Had to use USA Today for the stats. And Bobby Witt came up that year out of nowhere. And so he was known as B. Witt. And we couldn't even look up what his first name was.
Right.
So you're looking in the agate, and it's like B. Witt with the victory. All right. Well, B. Witt was a good pickup for.
I guess that counts for me.
Yeah, for one of the teams. Can we quickly talk about Hofstra? Because I know you went to Hofstra.
I'm looking up Darren Oliver here because this is fascinating to me.
Yeah,
I want to see who got the first hit in interleague play. That's all. I should have known that. June 12th. Actually, June 12th. Whoa, so much earlier. Okay. Wow. June 12th, Giants win 4-3. Wow. The save, the late Rod Beck.
The late run, the shooter. Yeah.
Shooter for the Cubs, right? He was a Cub before that,
Yeah,
right? Or after that.
Yeah, 90.
98.
He was on the
They won the
98
wild card
team.
game.
Yeah, he was on the
I
90.
mean, they won the playoff game, right?
They did. Yeah.
Do you remember who won that game for the Cubs, or at least started the game?
It wasn't Kyle Farnsworth, was it?
No, that was a little before Farnsworth time. Think slow. Steve Traxel. Future Met. And this is great. I'm sorry, I gotta say this, then we'll talk about the Hofstra. The first 3 batters for the Giants in the first interleague game all have Subway Series connections. Darrell Hamilton, it's a single for the first hit. He leads off. Former Met, plays in 2000.
Okay.
I was a reserve in 2000. This is great. Second batter is Jose Vizcaíno, who had the game-winning hit in Game 1 of the World Series.
Okay.
And played for both the Mets and the Yankees. He hit into a double play. And then Jeff Kent, who was came up with the Mets, but just was kind of was a real hothead and just wasn't good. They traded him. They got him for David Cohn in '92, and then traded him to Cleveland, and then he ended up being a Hall of Fame caliber player for the Giants. So he made the last out of the inning, and Darren Oliver pitched for the Mets in 2006.
So
it's all connected.
And it was indeed Darren Oliver who threw the first pitch?
Yeah, okay. Darren Oliver, Darrell Hamilton. Darrell versus Darren, yep.
So did Darren Oliver play elsewhere between Texas?
Yeah, he played for the Mets in 2006, played for the Rockies, played for the Cardinals, the Red Sox. He bounced around for a while.
And then came back
back to Texas.
Wow.
Then to Toronto, and then I think to Texas again to end it. He had a really good second career. He was like a starter, kind of got knocked around.
Yeah.
You know, back in the 90s, you could post a 5 ERA and be a starter for like 10 years.
Right, which is then, probably what he did.
And then he became a reliever. He was like a swingman for a while. And then he was just a really good lefty situational guy. He pitched well into his 40s. Pitched well into his 40s. Good work if you can get it.
Yeah. And so I'm assuming Darren Oliver does not have a Hofstra connection.
If you give me 20 minutes, I'll find one. No, Darren's a Texas kid. I think he's from Texas. So if he's not, no Hofstra connection. But
you have the Hofstra connection.
I do.
And you've been covering that team forever. So
1993, I got there in the fall of '93.
And talk to me about what this season was like, because can we call you a long-suffering fan in addition to a Hofstra chronicler?
Well, that tag on Twitter in my bio, the Hofstra student paper is called the Chronicle.
Oh, so
I liked that little subtle sly nod to my roots as a Hofstra writer. So I got the Hofstra in the fall of '93. I did it 2 years at junior college back home in Connecticut. I was way ahead of the curve of that because I think people going to junior colleges a lot starting this fall.
Mm-hmm.
I just wasn't ready. I was a kid who was immature, but not in the I'm going to college to drink mommy and daddy's money away. I just wasn't a very mature kid, academically and socially. I mean, who knows? If I went away to college, I did tell my dad, I said, if you send me away to college, because he had said, look, you've got, a chance, we can send you. I got into Southern Connecticut State University, Division II school in New Haven. I'm just not ready. He's like, look, you can go. We're fortunate. I'm like, I'll go, but I'll come back in a semester with 0.9 and you'll blow whatever the money was. So it worked out really well. And I liked it so much. My sister, who's 2 years behind me in school, went there as well. So it worked out really well for my parents. So I just got my stuff together a little bit, got better academically, socially, all that. And so I wanted to go to a school that had a Division I sports program because I wanted to cover Division I sports. And so you pick up the paper back in the day and, the standings, okay. Hofstra's independent, good enough.
Yeah.
Close enough. So, and they play 1AA football, which I wanted to cover a football team because I covered football at high school level back home in Connecticut, and I liked doing it. Mm-hmm. So I get to campus, and we're in this thing called the East Coast Conference with the Chicago State and Northeastern Illinois. What the bleep is this stuff? So, that was my introduction to that, and then April '94, Hofstra calls a press conference, and the big news is that they got into a conference, the North Atlantic Conference, which is now the America East Conference. And by the way, we also have a basketball coach, new head men's basketball coach. His name is Jay Wright. But whatever, we got into a new league. Whatever, Jay Wright's fine. Good. Of course, you know.
Right.
By the way, we got into another league too.
Yeah.
So Jay was our coach from '94 to 2001, or 7 seasons, and it was literally, you know, he called it the sleeping giant, and it was comatose. It was just, you know, a combination of just a lot of nothing that was Hofstra's fault. It was just it had been the ECC back in the day was a really good league. Temple, LaSalle, American, St. Joseph's. That's the really good thing. Which of course beat DePaul one year. Mm-hmm. DePaul was like 31-1, right, back in the day.
Yeah.
And I think St. Joe's might have beat Notre Dame too in a NCAA tournament game. I know they got to the Final 8 one year. So the ECC was a really good league, but just little by little it broke off. And so St. Joe's went to the A10. And LaSalle, I think, went to the LaSalle went to the MAC, MAAC. It just broke off little by little, and then it turned into kind of what we now know as a mid-major. It could be a major league with Delaware, Drexel, Towson State at the time, Hofstra, you know, Lafayette. I think Lehigh was in it. A really good East Coast league, and then, but the NAC took Delaware, Drexel, and then Patriot came up and took the really good academic schools, American, Lafayette, Lehigh. So the East Coast Conference was now like what the ECC was then, what I think the WAC is now. Like just trying to hang on. Just we'll grab Buffalo. You're coming in, great. Central Connecticut State, where my parents went to school, great. You're coming in Division I. We'll come in. Brooklyn, come on. So the core was Hofstra and Towson and Ryder, and eventually Ryder left, and Towson went to the Big South. And so by the end of 91, 92, the league had no bid and didn't have enough teams. You need 6 teams, I think 6 teams with 6 years of service in the league to have an automatic bid. And the ECC didn't even have that. Mm-hmm. So that happened 91, 92. Towson left, Ryder left. Every school left except Hofstra and Central. And then 92, 93, 93, 94, as you know, a handful of teams making the move up and or who didn't have homes joined the ECC. So it was let's go over, Dave. It was Hofstra. It was Central. Yep. It was Buffalo. East Coast-ish. Mm-hmm. It was Troy State in Alabama. Not
nowhere near anything. No.
Not the East Coast.
Right.
Chicago State.
Nowhere
not a
near.
state.
Yeah.
And Northeastern Illinois. So that was their, you know, so the ECC, it's like Hofstra, you know, had been a pretty good program, and through no fault, just bad luck, had become this kind of like barely on the fringe of Division I. So they knew they had to get into a real conference. They did. And they just got generationally lucky with Jay Wright. 32 years old at the time. You know, had a good pedigree. Was coaching with Raleigh Massimino at UNLV. But you don't know.
Right.
I mean, he owned a room. I mean, I can tell you that for sure. You know, that we thought that in real time. This guy is just comfortable with the crowd and makes everyone feel like they've known him forever. But if you're telling me that I would thought that he would win 2 championships at Hofstra and then go to Villanova, win 2 national championships and be a rock solid Hall of Famer and, you know, be the next Coach K / Roy Williams / Jim Boeheim, no, I'd be lying to you. So, but yeah, so, you know, he kind of just built a program, you know, we were like, I think they had like 10 wins in his first year, 9 his second, 31 wins in his first 3 years. But the AD and the president were like, all right, we know there's a lot to do here. And then his 4th year, they won 20 games. 5th year, they made the NIT, which was a big deal. And 6th and 7th year, they made the NCAA tournament, winning the America East at home. And it's funny, you know, you remember watching Villanova win the first championship. They won on the buzzer beater, the shot in all shots.
Yeah.
And the footage of Jay, he's watching, going bang, like he knows it's going in, goes in, and he just starts walking up the sideline like,
yeah.
That's how he was when we won the first time. The place is going bananas. People are getting to storm the court. And he's like, all right, we won, cool. He goes, shakes hands with Mike Bray, future Notre Dame head coach. And he was just the calmest guy. Like the whole chaos around him. But like to see him react like that in 2016, he was like, I've seen that, you know. So Hofstra does really well under Jay Wright, and then as he left, the school left for the CAA, the Colonial Athletic Association, because the outgoing president at the time, Dr. James Stewart, wanted to find a home for the football team because he had played football following World War II at Hofstra. And Hofstra at the time was independent, 1AA. And it was hard, not impossible, but hard to get. It was really hard to schedule at 1AA. And it was hard to get a playoff bid at 1AA. Then again, to a league, at the time, the CAA schools were in the Atlantic 10 Football League. And so he wanted to get a home for Hofstra football and secure basketball as well. The irony is Hofstra did really well in the Atlantic 10 that first year in 2001. Then Dr. Stewart retired, and the program was de-emphasized under his replacement, and eventually dropped in 2009. So we went to the CAA, which was a more southern-based league, and a much better league at the time than the America East was. So Hofstra took its lumps for a few years, got to be pretty good in the mid-2000s, and then in 2006 went 26-7, and didn't get an at-large bid despite a top 30 RPI. At-large bid went to George Mason instead, who Hofstra beat twice in the last 10 days of the season and had a contentious relationship with. They went to the Final Four.
Right.
Hofstra went to the Elite Eight of the NIT. What would you rather have? So Hofstra for 15, almost 20 years, the CAA kind of had this like close but not quite, couldn't get over the hump. 2016, they went to the championship game, lost in overtime. 2019, they led wire to wire and just kind of ran out of steam, and they got beat by Northeastern in the title game. And that team had future NBA player Justin Ray Foreman on it. So I thought, all right, they'll be okay this year, but that window closed. But in this, it's a cool like history repeating itself thing. In 2000, Hofstra won the championship, lost an NBA player, Craig Speedy Claxton, and then repeated and won 2001 because like the core was still there, and the competitive juices of hey, we weren't just this guy. The rest of us are pretty good too, and that's what happened this year with Hofstra. They were picked first in the league, but without the most first place votes. To touch how balanced the league was, and they were they up and down. They lost their opener San Jose State, beat UCLA, hot and cold, and they got real hot in mid-January, and went like 10-1 down the stretch or something. And so they get to the conference tournament as the 1 seed, so which means your backup is the NIT. All right, it's better than nothing. But as we're getting there, we're like, is there going to be an NIT this year? Is there going to be an NCAA tournament this year? I don't know. And the week before the tournament in Washington, D.C., which was held from a Saturday to a Tuesday, March 7th to 10th, even the Hofstra coach was on with Mike Francesa in New York saying, we've even talked about what do we do if the tournament gets canceled? What do we do? That sounds a little crazy. Not the NCAA tournament, the CAA tournament.
Right.
That's crazy. It's not going to happen. But, the night before, I'm like to my wife, should we really go to this? Is this a good idea? Yeah, it's okay. It's not good, but it's not this crazy thing that's going to take over the world. So driving down March 7th on Saturday, it just bits and pieces of bad news. We get to a rest stop in New Jersey, and Andrew Cuomo declares a state of emergency in New York because there's a cluster of cases in New Rochelle, which is a few miles north of Manhattan, of the city, of the 5 boroughs. A friend of mine texts me and says he wants to go to the Atlantic 10 tournament in Brooklyn. He lives in the Mid-Atlantic. He's like, but Amtrak is cutting trains. They're cutting their service. Not cutting it, not eliminating, but just dropping the number of trains they offer. And I got a note from the Islanders, who I cover up here, saying that starting that day's game, locker rooms would be closed to prevent the spread of this. So just there's just this isn't normal. This isn't
right.
We talked that week. We're like, okay, maybe this is just come and go, and it's just kind of like it's coming. Whatever it is, it's coming. And so Hofstra plays on the 8th, 9th, and 10th. 8th is a Sunday, 9th is Monday, 10th is Tuesday, and they win the first 2 games. And so we get to Tuesday, and we're like, hey, if we win, no hugging, just all right, it'll be awesome, but this thing, whatever this is legit. Let's be careful. Hofstra wins, and what happens? And the game was really close. It was like a 1-point game at the last TV timeout, and so it wasn't like Hofstra led the whole way and was dominant, and you could kind of like prepare for it. It was like they led by 1. I think it was 1 point. It might have been 3 at the last TV timeout, and then just went like a 10-0 run, and this like literally, I looked at the rerun, and it was a 9-minute span between the last TV timeout and the buzzer, and it went from I don't know if this could be the greatest, the worst near miss yet. It happened, euphoria.
Right.
So people are hugging, handshaking, high fives, and crying and all that stuff, and
Right.
driving home, like, that's awesome. At that point we knew we weren't going to we were not going to watch them in the tournament. But
Right.
there'll probably still be a tournament. What the first question I got from somebody on the staff, the first question after they won wasn't, or first comment wasn't, holy bleep, we did it. It was, are we going to play? I said, I think you'll play, but I think it'll be empty arenas, and I think it'll be delayed. I don't think you're going to play it next week. All right, I can take that. And then let's see, Hofstra won at 9:00. Within 24 hours, maybe just over, Rudy Gobert gets diagnosed, and Tom Hanks gets it.
Yeah.
And in a handful of minutes, the NBA goes from we're playing a full slate of games to we're done. And you knew then that that what was coming next, And I still have the screenshot saved on my phone from when it happened at 4:20, I think, on March 13th. Get the blurb, the breaking news alert: the NCAA tournament's canceled. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Bummer.
And
but you get it.
That entire timeline was really weird. I had March 11th as kind of this red letter date when everything happened, including, it was my IFB, including the Rudy Gobert, followed immediately by the NBA canceling
until the next day.
Yeah, that would also on the 11th, if I recall correctly, the state of Ohio, where they were going to have the first 4 games and then some games in Cleveland, the governor had said no gatherings with people indoors. So that was off. And then that night was when President Trump gave his speech saying we're closing the travel to and from Europe this coming Friday.
Yep.
So
I think it went Trump speech, Gobert, or Trump speech, Hanks, Gobert.
Yeah.
Definitely Trump speech, and then one of the two things happened.
Right. That was when people were throwing around the line that there are years where nothing happens, and then there are weeks where years happen. And this was
nights.
This was a day that a year happened. So what has I think Hofstra, I haven't followed it anywhere near as closely as you, but it looks as if the team, the players, the administration, they're bummed as heck, as is everybody. But then again, they're still they have an advantage, I think, over some of the other teams in that they'll still be able to hang something from the rafters next year, or when people are back in an audience. They won a championship, which is what you want to do.
I've got a T-shirt to prove it.
Yeah. And so what has the mood been like among the administrators and any of the players, if you've talked to them since all of this happened in the 3 months since?
Yeah. It's a great question. It was like, yes, this sucks. And, because that Hofstra had had the resume of a team that could make a little noise, win a game.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 games. They had senior guards. They played a really good zone defense, the Boeheim zone. And like they always play a zone defense because they only go 6 or 7 deep. So you got to play zone to kind of keep from, run out of gas.
Exactly.
But they never played it as well as they did this year. They allowed like an average of 50-odd points in the 3 tournament games, which is just impossible in the year 2020 with the shot clock being what it is and 3-point basket being what it is. So they had a real shot to make some noise, and so that hurts. But you totally understand why it happened, because can you imagine what you're talking about if you played in this way tournament? You just couldn't. It's impossible to imagine that you could have gone from where we were on Wednesday, March 11th to Thursday, March 19th and playing tournament games.
Yeah.
So, but there's this real sense of also we celebrated. So like I'm in the New York area. Rutgers was in a great position. They'd never made the tournament since 1992. Had their best team maybe since they made the Final Four in '76. And they were going to the tournament no matter what. They were in.
Right.
But they didn't officially get in.
Right.
Hofstra, and again, Rutgers was going. I'm not diminishing. They were going. Trust me.
Right.
But Hofstra got the tournament. They dribbled out the clock. They cut down the nets. They got a championship banner. So like as awful as this is, and this being the state of the world in terms of what this is, how this has impacted everybody, and as much it stinks on a micro level to not be able to play in the NCAA tournament, you can't put back in the bottle everything everybody felt on March 10th, and that was euphoric and cathartic. And so I think, and knock on wood, everybody's okay from that group. No one had it, or has had it yet, as far as I know. Certainly nobody got it from that experience in Washington, D.C.
Right.
And one of the officials that officiated the outbracket game on Saturday tested positive.
Okay.
So we were all freaked out for a couple weeks after that. But so like there was a sense that players, fans, coaches, administrators, we, the collective we, were able to experience that and, and stayed, everybody was healthy afterwards.
Right.
So you can't put that back in a bottle. We didn't win we didn't make the tournaments. We didn't make the championship. No. People, that feeling, it happened. And so I think people feel very grateful for that, especially given what's happened since then. I like to call that the last night of normal, and it really was.
Yeah.
It really was. And like again, that's another. What is normal? I mean, if you're our age and you've been through 9/11, stuff's not normal since then. It's not.
Correct.
But 9/10 was the last normal day. But we all kind of we both lost parents. Nothing's normal again after that.
Right.
But you find a new sort of a new normal, and here we are all searching for that. So I didn't even get all deep for a second there, but so normal is a crazy term, elastic term, but for what it was in 2020, March 10th, they got to celebrate the last night of pre-coronavirus by winning a championship.
Yeah.
Being really happy. And like you watch the clips, you see them online, and Hofstra occasionally, remember when, Throwback Tuesday, Throwback Thursday, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And like you see a picture of the Hofstra center, Isaac Conte, going to the crowd, waving his arms like this. Like that's just hard to wrap your mind around. Like that happened.
Yeah, because it seems that's the weirdest thing about all this is how long ago some of these things seem. And the reality is it's been 3 months. It's been a forever worth of 3 months, and the number of changes. And
here's one way to look at it. Like you and I agree that the day where stuff hit the fan is 3/11, right?
Mm-hmm.
March 11th.
Yeah.
So 9/11 was an 11. So it's easy to track like, where were we when in terms of after the fact. Baseball played 6 days later. September 17th, the Mets were in Pittsburgh. The Yankees were in Chicago, I think, at the White Sox. I think. I could be wrong. But there was baseball 6 days after 9/11.
Yeah.
The schedule got wiped out, got postponed, and then tacked on to the last week of the season. So, and then the Diamondbacks won the World Series, I think on November 3rd or 4th, the first Sunday of November. So we are not, it's like, we're so far, we're now at like, it's almost Christmas. 2001.
Yeah.
This is how we are as far now from 3/11, the sports shutting down, as Christmas was from 9/11. Is that crazy to think about?
That is
by Christmas by Christmas 2001. What's today's date? 19th.
Yeah.
So we're a week away from Christmas.
Yeah.
So by the time, as much time has passed now, has passed between 9/11 and the week of Christmas. And where were you the week of Christmas? You're like already kind of like. You've gotten back in some sense of normalcy, and you're working, and it's not the same. It's not normal. You're
right.
Everything freaks you out. You don't want to watch the news because it freaks you out.
Right.
But your life has kind of resumed some semblance of September 10th.
Mm-hmm.
You're back to work. Now it's like we're all in limbo here.
Yeah.
And it's been 3 months and how many days? 3 months and 8 days, and. You see the news this afternoon before we chatted about COVID-19 cases spiking in Clearwater. When do we get back to we're watching sports at this point, 2001.
Right.
You're watching basketball and hockey and getting ready for baseball, and it's like all right, it's not normal, but there's the usual things on the sideline that you're used to seeing. Now it's just like, where is it?
Well, that's weird. We needed that after 9/11 because of you needed the sense of community and togetherness and gathering, and the fact that so much of New York became the sports focal point afterwards. You had the first game back and the Piazza.
September 21st, yep.
And
Which, by the way, I missed because it was the night before my birthday, but also the night before my 10th high school reunion.
Oh, wow.
So the most home run in Connecticut watching my reunion, where I did as the most popular guy.
Wow.
That's not true. That's not true. But anyway, so yeah. So yes, 10 days after the fact, and like in the book, actually, I talk about, nobody really wanted to play that game because, you remember, it's 2001. Every airport is a target. Every airplane is a weapon.
Right.
You know where Shea Stadium was built, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's LaGuardia Airport.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
And it's funny. Bobby Valentine, the manager of the Mets lost Game 5 of the World Series in 2000. The last out was Piazza hit a bomb to dead center field that died on the track before the track. Bernie Williams caught it before the track. September 21st, 2001, he hits the home run way beyond the center field fence, but in the same general area as the out in the World Series.
Right.
And Bobby Valentine said that he'd read that there were studies done on the effect that the air traffic has on the baseball and the drag it creates. He's like, what wasn't happening on September 21st, 2001? There were no airplanes.
Right.
What was happening on October 25th, whatever, 2000? There were airplanes. So, yeah, fascinating. He's like, because I watched every game from the same spot in my dugout, in the home dugout, and every ball off his bat said that's a home run. And I hit the ball off Mo Rivera, which, by the way, was the third most recent last out in which the pitcher and batter were both Hall of Famers. Rivera versus Piazza.
What were the other ones?
I have to look it up. I have it written down. Give me a minute. I'll look it up.
Okay, pitcher and batter, both Hall of Famers, last out of the World Series.
And the fourth's not on the horizon yet, I don't think. So the most closest, I think, was Salvador Perez made the last out against Madison Bumgarner in 14. But anyway, I digress. Okay. Bobby said, every home run I watched from the same spot in the dugout, and that ball off Rivera, that was a home run. And a second later, I realized it was not. So give me a second to look up that file. So what were you asking me before that?
I think I was talking about the sense of community that was necessary, and how it's going to be so much different if it ever gets there with sporting events that allow people. Because I mean, that's kind of the one thing we all need, but the one thing we're probably the most scared of as a society is getting back congregating in a ballpark.
Yep. I got the answer.
Okay.
Quick. 1928, Waite Hoyt retires Frankie Frisch.
Wow.
1938, Red Ruffing retires Billy Herman. In 2000, Mo retires Mike Piazza.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty cool, huh? That was a fun afternoon of Baseball Reference.
There you go. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well,
We're sitting every day, kids.
We do. I've taken way too much of your time. I appreciate
This
it.
is fun. No problem, appreciate me on.
Well, there will be more of these, and I'm sure we'll continue these on Twitter. So,
awesome.
Thank you, Jerry Beach.
Thank you. And it's on Amazon.
Oh yes, of course.
The Subway Series. It's the Subway Series, baseball's Big Apple battles, and the Mets Yankees 2000 World Series. Oh, he's got a World Series Classic. Amazon. If you go to my Twitter, Jerry Beach 73, I have it hot linked in my link. It's my link. Fun book. My dad liked it very much, so that counts.
That's very important.
Everyone seems to like it who reads it. It's a fun, quickish read. 200, just shy of 200 pages, I think. And I'd love if there's baseball in 2020 to have to write a postscript if the Mets and Yankees play each other, but I don't know if that's going to happen, but it's a fun book, and especially we don't have baseball for a little while. If you like baseball, especially in the New York area, I go into the details of the whole of baseball history in New York before that. It's mostly about the 2000 series, but some of the Subway Series stuff. I enjoyed writing about Yogi Berra and his link, because he of course caught the perfect game in the previous Subway Series of '56. So it's a lot of fun. It's got some history to it, and hopefully soon we're talking about real baseball.
Yes, exactly. Cool. Well, thanks so much.
Thanks, Dave.
And I'm
Appreciate it, man.
gonna hit the stop recording button now.
Safe,
We'll see.